May I please have everyone's attention? Before the public hearing begins, we ask that everyone please silence your cell phones. The Fort Bend ISD Board of Trustees is holding a public hearing as required by law. Following the presentation, the board will ask if anyone present wants to make a comment on the presentation. We also ask that members of the audience be respectful of others by remaining quiet so that everyone is able to hear the presentation and ask questions. Thank you.
The time is 5:35. We have a presence of a quorum, and we're going to start public hearing. The first thing on the agenda item is the information item for the staff to present the type of report. Thank you.
Good evening. Tonight we will be holding the annual public hearing to review the 2021-2022 District Annual Report. In common language with school districts, many people refer to this as an annual TAPER report. However, TAPER, the Texas Academic Performance Report, is only one item that is a part of the larger compilation of data that represents the annual report. This evening, the administration will be reviewing the information included in the district's annual report for the 2021-2022 school year and providing an opportunity for public comment. At this time, I will turn it over to Ms. Lisa Costin, the Director of Accountability, Assessment, and Compliance, to present.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, and Dr. Whitbeck. This evening, I would like to present information. I'm sorry. Oh, there we go. Okay. This evening, I would like to present information about the purpose and requirements of the district annual report, review each of the 8 sections that comprise the Fort Bend ISD annual report, and provide an opportunity for public comment. The Texas Education Agency provides guidance annually on how districts should fulfill their legal responsibilities regarding the annual report of their educational performance and the Texas Academic Performance Report, or otherwise known as TAPER. Statute requires that each district publish an annual report, an actual document, that includes the PDF TAPER as well as other information required to be published as part of the annual report. Law also requires that each district's Board of Trustees hold a public hearing, which we're doing tonight, to discuss the district's annual report. Within 2 weeks following the public hearing, each district must publish its annual report, which we will be doing on the website, on our Fort Bend ISD website. The published annual report is compiled after all data has been requested for 21-22 on the topics that are listed here, these 8 sections in our agenda for tonight. You might be wondering why now? Why are we talking about the 2021-22 data in March of 23? The annual report is similar to an annual report of a public corporation. It summarizes data that has been reported in a variety of ways throughout a particular year, in this case, the 2021-22 school year. And only after the year has concluded and becomes a matter of public record of that data that's compiled can we hold this hearing and give you the information that TEA has put together in the TAPER report. The full report and all legally required sections are not fully available to us as the district and to the public until TEA publishes that TAPER report. The Texas Academic Performance Report, or TAPER, is compiled by the Texas Education Agency for every district and campus in the state using PEIMS and student assessment data. 2021-22 TAPER was published and is published as a PDF and includes a wide range of information on the performance of students in each district and campus in the state. Performance is shown disaggregated by student groups, including ethnicity, socioeconomic status, and it provides extensive information on school and district staff, programs, and student demographics. Shown on this slide is a copy of the cover page of the TAPER at the bottom of the slide for 2021-22. Fort Bend ISD received the accountability rating overall of a B. Districts also receive one of 4 special education determination statuses: meets requirement, needs assistance, needs intervention, or needs substantial intervention. Fort Bend received a needs assistance status. A complete copy of the taper, in addition to the other documents included in this presentation, will be published on the Fort Bend ISD website within the 2 weeks. Data included in the taper report represents STAR performance, STAR academic growth, bilingual education and English as a second language data, and STAR participation for both the school year that ended with 2021 and the school year that ended with 2022. Attendance, graduation, and dropout rate data is also included in the taper, and those are reported for the class of 2020 and the class of 21, because those sets of data, along with the graduation profile, lag behind. Now I'd like to review some key portions of the data in the 21-22 taper. Performance level descriptors provide a snapshot of students' academic characteristics based on performance on a given STAR assessment. These performance levels are statements that describe the specific knowledge and skills students typically demonstrate at each performance level. Master's grade level, meets grade level, approaches grade level, and did not meet are the 4 performance levels. Approaches, which is represented on the current slide by content area, is the minimum passing standard. Performance in this category indicates that students are likely to succeed in the next grade or course with targeted academic intervention. Students in this category generally demonstrate the ability to apply the assessed knowledge and skills in familiar contexts. The district outperformed the state and region in all content areas for approaches and above, as seen on this slide, with the green bar. I know it's hard to see on the screen, but the green bar indicates Fort Bend ISD. This slide is still using the approaches grade level, performance level, and represents all subjects and grade levels combined, and is broken out by student groups as reported in the taper. The top 3 student groups achieving at the approaches and above performance levels are the Asian student group with 94%, white student group with 88%, and 2 or more races student group with 84%. Performance in the meets category indicates that students have a high likelihood of success in the next grade level or course, but may still need some short-term targeted intervention. Students in this category generally demonstrate the ability to think critically and apply the assessed knowledge and skills in familiar contexts. Like the approaches performance level, Fort Bend ISD outperformed the state and region in all content areas. This slide represents the percentage of students achieving at the meets and above by individual student group. The top 3 student groups achieving at the meets and above performance level are, again, the Asian student group with 80%, the white student group with 68%, and the 2 or more races student group with 64%. Performance in the master's grade level category indicates that students are expected to succeed in the next grade level or course with little or no academic intervention. Students in this category demonstrate the ability to think critically and apply the assessed knowledge and skills in varied contexts, both familiar and unfamiliar. Students achieving at the master's level are performing at the highest level on STAR. Like the approaches and meets performance levels, Fort Bend ISD is outperforming the state and region in all content areas. Here you can see the student groups broken out individually for the master's grade level as well. And just to clarify, in the approaches and above, that includes students who met approaches level, meets level, and master's level all combined together. The meets and above slides are those students who got meets or masters all combined together. Academic progress is another section in the taper. A growth score was awarded for improving performance, year over year as measured by STAR progress and performance levels on STAR. The numbers on the chart represent percentage of students that maintained or improved their STAR performance levels in 2022 in comparison to 2019. So this one is a little bit different than the last one because on the TAPER report, all of the STAR performance measures are based on looking at a comparison between 2021 and 2022. This one is a comparison of 2022 and 2019. An example of why this happened is that, for example, a student who in 2019 was a fourth grade student and may have passed STAR at the approaches performance level in ELA. Due to the COVID pandemic, the student was not tested in 2020, and in 2021, TEA did not provide a growth or a progress measure because there was no test in 2020. The same student who would in 2022 be a seventh grader, their scores would then be compared to 2019, which was the last time that they had taken an ELA test and had a growth measure or a progress measure. They would be compared to their 2019 when they were in fourth grade, and then TEA determined did they meet that progress measure that they were supposed to meet. So then the percentage of students who met that complicated look at their comparison between 2019 and 2022 are counted in these percentages. Fort Bend ISD saw an improvement in academic growth for ELA of 6 percentage points while maintaining the same level of growth percentage in math when compared to 2019. Combining both reading and math, the district experienced a 3% growth from 2019 to 2022. Additionally, the TAPER reports on attendance and dropout rates. Attendance rates took a 2.3 percentage point decrease compared to the 2019-20 school year. The annual dropout rate for grades 7 and 8 saw no change when comparing the 19-20 school year to 2021. The annual dropout rate for grades 9 through 12 experienced a 0.6 percentage point increase when comparing to the 19-20 school year. And we also want to point out there's a little asterisk for 1920. In that particular year is when we had the beginning of the pandemic in the spring of 2020. And although our TAPER report says 98.6% attendance, that's based on 6 weeks of attendance that year. That was across the state because most school districts were not actually in physical attendance in the last couple of 6 weeks of the 2020 school year. This slide represents the 4-year cohort longitudinal graduation rate. And this cohort consists of students who first entered 9th grade in 2017-18. They're followed through their expected graduation with the class of 2021, which would be the 4-year cohort. This represents graduates who received their high school diploma in 4 years or fewer by August of 2021. TAPER also reports on the 5- and 6-year graduation rates that are not represented on this slide, but they are included in the TAPER. As a district, we maintained the same rate from the class of 2020 to the class of 21. There were improvements in several student groups, including the white, American Indian, Asian, 2 or more races, special education, and emergent bilingual student groups. Fort Bend ISD graduation rates are above the state and regional averages by 5 percentage points each. The reported graduation data is for the class of 2020. The student groups with the highest graduation percentages were Asian with 99%, American Indian with 97%, and the white student group with 96%. Another category reported in TAPER is the college, career, and military readiness data. This is one of the data sets that's always reported by a lag of at least 1 year as well. The most recent data for these measures are from the class of 2021, which would be the 2020-21 school year. Therefore, performance on these measures is reported in a comparison on the TAPER for the 2019-20 and 2020-21 school years. College, career, and military readiness are measured using criteria for college readiness, career indicators, and military graduates. Fort Bend is 1 percentage point above the region average and 3 percentage points below the state average on CCMR. Another big section on the taper is the student information section. This includes student enrollment, including enrollment by grade level, by ethnicity, by certain student identification indicators, and students with disabilities by primary eligibility category. And there's other student information, including graduation information, retention rates, and class size information included in the taper as well. The distribution of ethnicities within the student population reiterates the diversity of Fort Bend ISD. The 4 largest ethnicities account for 95.8% of the district student population for the 2021-22 school year. African American was 27.8%, Asian at 26.9%, Hispanic at 26.5%, and white at 14.6%. As included in the taper report, 47.8% of the district was economically disadvantaged for the 2021-22 school year, and 42.8% was considered at risk. The staff information section in taper includes total staff, staff by classification, teachers by ethnicity and gender, teachers by highest degree held and years of experience, experience of campus leadership, staff salary, and teacher turnover rate. Staffing does not correlate fully to student demographics. Our African American staff representation are closely aligned to the percentage of students in this ethnicity, but our Hispanic and Asian staff representation are below when compared to our student demographics. The largest percentage of staff with years of experience is in the 11 to 20 year category. In this experience range, Fort Bend ISD is 2 percentage points above the state average. Job roles that are included in each category in the staff section include professional staff, teachers, professional support staff, campus administration, central administration, educational aides, and auxiliary staff. Fort Bend is aligned with the state average in most categories, but slightly below the state average with central administration, campus administration, professional staff, and educational aides. We are 2.1 percentage points above the state average with professional support staff. Another section where in the taper it's only reported as a label of our special education determination status, which is needs assistance, is based, all of the data used to determine that level is based on the reporting in the RDA, or the results-driven accountability system. The performance levels in RDA range from a 0 to a 4, with 0 being the best. For 2022, the results-driven accountability determination level was a level 2, needs assistance. Fort Bend triggered this determination level due to the rate of African American students served with special education services who received ISS, OSS, DAEP, and DAEP as compared to other students served in special education. This slide represents the 18 indicators measured in the results-driven accountability system for special education students. There are 3 domains that represent academic achievement, numbers 1 through 5, post-secondary readiness, numbers 6 through 7, and disproportionate analysis, numbers 8 through 18. The reason we're showing you all these is because special education is held accountable for all of these indicators. We've made gains in academic achievement, post-secondary readiness, and some indicators in disproportionate analysis. However, we do maintain the label or the determination level of needs assistance. Fort Bend has maintained a performance level with best being 0 and the highest or worst being 3 in social studies. Math, reading, and science are all at a level 2, a performance level of 2, and that means the passing rate for special ed math and science has improved since 2021. They were on a performance level of 3 at that time in 2021. These special education results reflect approaches and higher results for all STAR 3 through 8 and EOC tests in all subject areas for students identified with special education and matched to additional student groups by race and ethnicity. Some indicators of the special education domain 3, which is the disproportionate analysis, in the RDA relate to calculated difference rates and risk ratios that compare outcomes among student, racial, and ethnic groups within special education only. When a group's risk ratios reach 2.5 or greater, this is called significantly disproportionate. In 2020-21, the risk ratio for African American special education students who received out-of-school suspension was above 2.5. for the third year in a row. In 2021-22, the risk ratio dropped below the threshold and is no longer considered significantly disproportionate because we saw growth there. However, the risk ratio related to the total disciplinary removals, including combined incidences of ISS, OSS, and DAEP, is above the threshold for the third year in a row. That led to the district continuing to be identified as significantly disproportionate. That concludes our review of Section 1, the taper portion of the annual report. Now I'm going to move on to the other sections. The taper review in Section 1 is quite lengthy, just simply because the nature of the taper is a very large amount of data and a lot of different categories. Each of the following sections are much shorter when compared to taper. Section 2 of the annual report is the inclusion of the 2020-21 PEIMS standard reports. These are always 2 years prior as part of the state required cycle, and this relates to financial reporting that we're required to do to the state. On October 17th, 2022, this past fall, the Business and Finance Department reviewed the 21-22 actual annual comprehensive financial report with the Board of Trustees, and data from financials in 21-22 will be included in the annual report next school year. So this report that's part of our annual report is 2020-21 actual financial data for both the district and the campuses. Section 3 of the annual report document is the district accreditation status. Due to the impact of COVID and the unique challenges faced by schools in the 1920 and 2020-21 school years, the Commissioner of Education decided not to assign accreditation statuses to any school districts in Texas until the 2022-23 school year. So for 2023, accreditation statuses will be announced. This means that Fort Bend remains accredited as the official designation that we held the last time that these statuses were announced, which was in the 1920 school year. Section 4 of the annual report includes the district and campus performance objectives for the 2021-22 District Improvement Plan and Campus Improvement Plans. At the September 9th board meeting, the various departments reviewed the end-of-year status for the 2022 school year for each of the performance objectives in the District Improvement Plan in detail and reported a summary of the campus progress on their 21-22 campus improvement plans. On the screen here, you can see the timeline that was shared in the fall regarding the 21-22 improvement planning process. The district and each campus developed and implemented a campus improvement plan or a district improvement plan as required by law. Each improvement plan included performance objectives that were approved by the board. Each campus periodically measured their progress and reported that progress on the performance objectives, and the updated campus improvement plans for 21-22 that showed the progress toward meeting their performance objectives were posted on the district's website. The annual report itself includes a copy of all district and campus board-approved performance objectives for 21-22, as well as the end-of-year final report that was provided to the board in September of 2022. The data presented in September of 22 regarding the end-of-year performance on campus improvement plans noted that campuses did make progress. The overview on this slide is a copy of what was provided in the end-of-year report in September and indicated that the majority of campuses made significant progress on most of their strategies, the majority of their strategies. Section 5 of the annual report includes the annual report of violent and criminal incidents. The Texas Education Code requires school districts to report the number, rate, and type of violent and criminal incidents that occurred on each district and campus. In this context, specific violations of the Texas Penal Code at a persistently high rate, as determined by TEA, can designate a public elementary or secondary school as persistently dangerous in accordance with the unsafe school choice option under ESSA. This section of the annual report is not intended to show a comprehensive view of all student behavior or disciplinary actions in our district, but to specifically report on this legally defined subset of violent or criminal incidents. The count of incidents divided by the total student enrollment determines the ratio that's used for the persistently dangerous label. Fort Bend ISD's ratio for violent and criminal incidents in 2022 is below the threshold for TEA's watch list. Discipline reason codes beyond the legal requirements for the report on violent and criminal incidents have been provided in the full report document that's going to be posted on the district webpage. In that document, these will include the legally required codes for violent and criminal incidents and all PEIMS reportable offenses, including those that do and do not result in ISS, OSS, and DAEP. So in the document itself, there's a broader number of codes that are reported. As required by TEA, the district has taken the following actions prior to the start of the 22-23 school year. Conducted a summer targeted partial safety audit, conducted an exterior door safety audit, convened the district safety and security committee to review the multi-hazard emergency operations plan, and as a component of the EOP, the district's active threat plan. Ensured all campus staff, including subs, are trained on their specific district and campus safety procedures, scheduled all mandatory drills for the school year, ensured all threat assessment team members are trained and reviewed, and as necessary, updated access control procedures. Procedures for reporting potential school violence may be found on the Student Affairs page of the Fort Bend ISD website. Section 6 of the annual report includes reporting on the student performance in post-secondary institutions. The Texas Education Code requires each district to publish, as part of its annual report, a report on student performance in post-secondary institutions during the first year enrolled after graduation from high school. These data are compiled by the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. This graph shows data calculated about first-year college performance for the Fort Bend ISD graduating class of 2020. These data are only available for students attending Texas public colleges and universities immediately following graduation. Students who attend private or out-of-state colleges and those who directly enter the workforce are not reflected here. The green dotted line indicates the Fort Bend ISD overall percentage, and the gold dashed line indicates the overall state percentage. Section 7 of the annual report contains the House Bill 3 goals as well as district and campus 2021-22 end-of-year progress. In May of 2021, the Board of Trustees approved House Bill 3 student outcome goals to be achieved by June of 24. These student outcome goals define annual targets for student performance in literacy, mathematics, and college and career readiness. The House Bill 3 student outcome plan includes a board monitoring calendar. As part of the reporting calendar, administration included a summative report on the district and campus improvement plans along with the House Bill 3 student outcome goals for the 21-22 school year. A summary of the district improvement plan progress and campus improvement plan progress is available within the board documents and is included in the annual report document that will be posted on our website within the next 10 days. As noted on the slide, Fort Bend did meet our 2022 targets for literacy. However, although we experienced growth in the number of students meeting grade level in math, we did not meet the 2022 annual target. For college, career, and military ready, we did see a decrease in the percent of students from 21 to 22 who met the CCMR criteria. It's important to remember that the 2022 CCMR data is based on the class of 21 graduates. All CCMR data lags behind by a full year, and we continue to see impacts of the pandemic on CCMR indicators. We predict for at least one more year, maybe longer than that, due to the wide variety of impacts caused by the pandemic. And the final section of the district annual report includes the official TAPER glossary. The glossary provides definitions, methodologies, and lists sources for areas in the TAPER report. It's a reference document to assist in understanding the complete report. It's not required by the state to be part of our report, but it is recommended that it be. The district's annual report, including the 21-22 TAPER for the district and all campuses in the district, will be posted on the district's website within 2 weeks after this meeting. Because we are required to include the complete unedited PDF versions of the district and campus TAPER documents, the actual annual report document is very lengthy and is best viewed electronically by using the bookmarks that we have embedded aligned with the table of contents. For questions or more information, members of the community can contact their student's campus for specific information about their campus data or the Accountability, Assessment, and Compliance Department here in Fort Bend ISD. Thank you for your time this evening. At this time, I'm open for questions about the annual report and we'll provide time for the required public comment.
Thank you, Dr. Costin, for the presentation this evening. We'll open it up to the board for comment, and we will start with Ms. Hannon.
Thank you very much, for the presentation. I would like to go to, I have slide 15 in my packet. I'm not sure if that's, let me tell you which one it is. It's the academic growth score page. And so I'm going to ask a couple of questions in concert with each other. So when I look, it's the red and blue bar graph. It says academic growth score. So I kind of have a combined question. So I appreciate that our interventions and our instruction have allowed our students to see growth there, even though I recognize it's very awkward because we were looking all the way back from 4th grade to how our 7th graders are doing. So I appreciate you explaining that to us so we understood that. But so with, for instance, the 73% and the 73% where we've kind of flatlined, I thought about that when I looked at the slide, and you don't necessarily have to go there, but the slide that shows campus and district performance objectives. And when I look at the number of strategies of support needed, and I see only one campus needing help, needing targeted strategies for support under cultivate ownership of learning and behavior. when I think about this data the student outcome data in relation to the campus performance objective, let me ask this question. I'm so sorry. I'm processing this myself. How would a campus principal or their supervisor define that support is needed?
I might turn that over to someone else, but before I do, I wanted to make sure that we're clear on what year, because there are lots of years represented in this data. So the campus improvement plans and the performance objectives that were adopted by the board were based on after we got data from the 2021 STAR test and, the year of 2020-21, because they're the 21-22 campus improvement plans. The data that is reported related to STAR in this particular report was in the spring of 22. So it would be the result of the strategies that were adopted by the board, the performance objectives and the strategies that campuses put into place in the summer and fall of 2021.
Okay, so we're looking at a year behind,
Yes.
and then this is reflective of what is being done the current year. These are based on the performance objectives in their campus improvement plan for this year.
No, nothing in this report is really about this year.
Okay.
It
So,
is all
thank you.
historical
Thank you.
information
Okay.
about 2022, spring of 22 and before.
I gotcha. So then that leads me to my follow-up question. Do we look back at this performance objective indicator, so when we have campuses that have a high number of students that are performing at the approaches and below, do we look at that and say, well, this campus indicated that there was no other support strategy needed, but in fact, perhaps there was needed? Do we use that in any way to help us propel forward?
What you're getting at is the comprehensive needs assessment that each campus and the district does annually. So in that look, it is designed to be comprehensive, and that means that you're not just looking at the data that you have at this point in time, you're looking at a variety of data sources and types of data, and you're comparing it historically. So you don't just automatically say, well, before we got STAR scores back, we thought that we had met this, but now we know better. You're not just automatically giving yourself credit for that particular strategy. Sometimes we report on formative reporting where we are at that point in time, and I believe the formative report that is included in our annual document was before September. It was created before September, so I'm not sure whether it had STAR scores involved or not. No, at that time, we didn't have the STAR scores included. But what happens is, after you close out that year, then we get all the STAR scores, all the data comes in, and that is used as we're preparing the strategies for the current year. So we got all of our STAR score data, accountability data, all that sort of stuff in August, and adjustments were made to the current year strategies based on the 2022 data.
Okay.
Would be for 22-23.
Okay. And really the reason for me asking was because we have and I get the pandemic and everything. We just have a really large number of certain subpopulations, Hispanic, for instance, that are scoring. Our African American students, 59% of them are at approaches or below. And so I just, I was reflecting on this objective chart, the performance objective chart, wondering how those work in concert, because I'm very concerned about this data coming into, where kids are about to take STAR again. So thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Malone.
Thank you, Ms. Hannon. Do we have any other questions, comments from the board? Yes, Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Madam President. So just wanted to make a couple comments. So I'll start with a comment and then ask a question. So I think it's worth reiterating with the discipline page that we had there. So I think the board sent the clear message that we want to be a little stronger with enforcing discipline as a district than we have been in the past. I know discipline is a complex matter. There's not an easy solution for all of our discipline problems, but I think there's a lot of pressure to view discipline as a bad word, and so I think discipline is a good word. And I would say in my own life, the academic success and lack of success, and athletic success and lack of success, and career success and lack of success, I would say my own discipline was one of the strongest factors in all of those areas. When I did well academically, athletically, or in my career, you can trace it back to being disciplined and doing the things that I should have been doing. And when I didn't do well in any of those areas, a lot of times I wasn't doing the things that I need to be doing. And so we need to embrace the fact that discipline is a good word, and it's a key ingredient for experiencing this success, whether it's academics, athletics, fine arts, across the board, for us as a district trying to make improvements, and also for our students. And so I think in the fallout of a lot of things that we've dealt with as a district, whether it's the Department of Education investigation, the ACLU lawsuit several years ago, and the way we've managed the fallout of those things, the message has been sent directly and indirectly that we need to try to discipline with these metrics involved. And I think that the message needs to be sent consistently that we want our teachers and administrators to do the right thing in each situation when it comes to discipline, and not do discipline in either direction, for better or worse, based on skin color. And so I think we just need to, if we want to make the progress that I think we need to make on the discipline front, then I think that message needs to be clearly and consistently communicated across the district. So then I want to ask a question. So as a general rule, I think when a student gets a high school diploma from Fort Bend ISD, I think as a general rule that should mean that kid is ready for either college or a job or the military. And so just looking at the 2 pages where we had those numbers side by side, we've got, so you pointed out that 95% of our students fall into one of the 4 main groups of students we have by race. And so there's some significant disparity on the college, career, and military readiness. I'd like to ask if someone can help us understand that disparity. So 86% of the time when a white student gets a diploma, so 86% of comparing the CCMR rate to the graduation rate. So you get 86% for white students, you get 87% for Asian students. So most of the time when a white or Asian student gets a diploma, they are college, career, or military ready. And when you look at the percentage for Black and Hispanic students, it's much lower. So can somebody help me understand that gap between, I guess, the value of the diploma for different students?
I think that might be a question that would be potentially answered better in a written response so that people have enough time to really dig into that data. I can let you know, though, that what that slide is representing is the percent of students in each student group who met the state-defined indicators. It's not necessarily exactly aligned to our profile of a graduate. And military ready in 2021, which this is the class of 2021, and for the class of 2022, military ready was actually not included by the state because there's been a lot of back and forth between the Texas Education Agency and the Department of Defense trying to get access to data for enlisted people who go into the military. The college readiness and career indicators are specifically based on the TSI assessment, Texas Success Initiative assessment, dual credit courses, advanced placement, exams, associate degrees, different things like that. And then the career indicators are based on industry-based certifications in CTE. So depending on how students go through a path in high school is going to determine which type of these criteria they might have an opportunity to meet. And like I said, I believe that it would probably be better fully answered about the differences in the student groups after this meeting, to give that department a time. Is that correct? Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Excellent question. I noticed that as well, so I'm looking forward to that information. I believe Dr. Whitbeck has something she'd like to add.
Yes, I just kind of at a point of clarity on the discipline piece and on that slide on the RDA's significant disproportionality. Last week, we hosted the Texas Education Agency representatives who were here to spot check various students across the district. I think this is good for our community to know. They literally pulled it up by ID numbers, spot checked, went to multiple campuses, met with Dr. Hill and various staff. But in that conversation, which I was a part of at the beginning, one of the things I think is really an important piece to this, and it's somewhat changed over the years. It used to be that if a student committed an offense that was a mandatory placement to the DAEP, meaning that, for example, let's say with vaping being so popular, vaping with THC, all right, that's a mandatory placement, which means that any principal in our district will place the child into the DAEP, regardless of the child, anything else about it, because it's mandatory. Well, that is counting against us. So one of my comments to the Texas Education Agency, and I think that we need to all be aware of, is that somewhat the focus on safe schools and drug-free schools is in complete contradiction to this indicator that we're all being held to. If we don't want to turn a blind eye, and we certainly don't want to say that that's acceptable. So I just want everyone to be aware that that's one of the things that don't make sense in our data. There's a lot of them, but that's one.
Thank you. That's good information. Mrs. Day.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Dr. Rayback, for that clarification. That was very helpful. So basically, if I hear correctly, partially, in a way, we're being penalized by doing the right thing. So, but I wanted to echo Mr. David Hamilton. I wanted to the teachers and the principals out there to continue to do the right thing, to teach our kids, because to be honest, sometimes if you fail, the best place to fail is when you are still in school, because we're providing this very safe environment. If you fall, someone will help you to get up, and then you become stronger. So I wanted to make my opinion, let's say my personal opinion, clear to our students and the teachers. Nobody is judging you if you fail. We're here for you to help you. And then teachers and principals, please continue to do the right thing. We're here to support you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Day. Dr. Gilliam.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Costin, for the presentation. So I just have a few thoughts. In looking at Section 1, the star meets grade level or above. I don't know, I don't have a slide number on that, where it has we are above other districts. I think the first one has reading 62%, and then the second one, mathematics 50%. I don't know what page number that is, but it's
slide 7.
Okay, so star meets grade level or above. So there's a lot of information here. We have a lot of people here, and parents as well as educators. I see a whole lot of folks. And a lot of what we heard is it states where we are. But when I'm looking at this particular slide, I automatically go to the negative. There's 38% of our students that academic grades 3 through 8, 38% do not meet. And 50% do not meet in math. And 46% do not meet in science. And 42% do not meet in social studies. So when we're talking about our campus improvement plans, I would like for us to, my suggestion, Dr. Whitbeck, is that we start looking at the taper data more intently so that we can make sure that we're putting in our campus improvement plans, specific improvement for these items. And I know that it's been hard because of the pandemic and not necessarily having real data, but that's why we need real data. And hopefully we can get back to actually looking at data so we can see where we are making those strides. I also had a question about, I think it was Section 5, where it had report on violent or criminal incidents. And you explained it, but you mentioned a threshold. What exactly is the threshold? What is the percentage of the threshold for, because we're under the threshold, but what is the threshold?
I don't have that data. Dr. Hartley? I'm going to ask Dr. Hartley to talk about that.
Okay.
While she's making her way up here, I did want to just clarify the statement that I made earlier about comprehensive needs assessment and looking at STAR data. So in the annual report for 21-22, the document related to the CIPs and the district improvement plan did not take into account the STAR data that was received in August of 2022, but the current year campus improvement plans and district improvement plan did take that data into account because there were updates that were made well before the performance objectives went to the board.
And I appreciate that. And I'm wondering, I don't necessarily think it probably would be that different as far as the points, but that we really do focus on how much work we have to do. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Gilliam, could you kind of elaborate on your question?
Well, and I don't know, I could have been listening wrong, but it has, okay, Section 5, report on violent criminal incidents. And so if we look at the ratio for 21-22 is 0.03, 20-21, 0.01%, and the 19-20, 0.03. And I hear that we are below, but then we're below the threshold. Well, what exactly is the threshold?
Okay.
I guess that number.
Let me answer this in a long and a short way.
Okay.
So when we look at this, these numbers, there's 3 different categories that we look at for accountability. One accountability is going to be our DVM, and this pertains to the violent criminal incidents. And DVM is looking at discretionary placements in Ferndale Henry for by ethnicity. So Student Affairs manages the DVM model, and it says the ratio would be 2.0. So your percentage or your ratio between African American students and the general placements in DAP, that ratio must be less than 2.0. For RDA, you look at your special education population, and it's any placement in DAP. I don't have the risk ratio for you, but it's very similar to what we talk about with the DVM. Dr. Hill might know the RDA.
I think perhaps we're a little bit off on your question. The threshold you're talking about is related to the violent criminal acts, and Ms. Costin said that we were at a 0.03%, which was under the threshold the state sets. And I think what Dr. Gilliam was asking is, what is that threshold?
Yes,
correct?
that's correct.
And I don't know that we have that tonight. I do know that TEA sets that threshold annually. So we can get that to you and share that so we can help you understand how far below we are.
That would be great. I think it's helping everyone here to understand.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys, and great questions, Dr. Gilliam. Ms. Williams?
Thank you. And I can't hear, by the way, so I'm going to be a little loud, but my question is relating to the CTE. When we talk about the lack of students participating in CTE, we need to remember that at one point we were charging students to even attend CTE. We were illegally charging for uniforms, and we were charging a fee. And we know that if a socioeconomic student cannot afford the fee or the high-priced uniform, it was the district's duty to provide those uniforms for those students. Texas Education Code, Chapter 11, Section 11.158. If you look at that code, you will see that the students were not being allowed. I mean, it's not that they don't want to participate in CTE, they were being priced out. So have we corrected that bad policy that we had in place of charging students for uniforms and having them pay fees?
I think that's related to like the current year practices. Is that correct? You're saying what are we doing this year?
No, what I'm saying is that we have determined that the data that we have is from a previous year.
Yes.
But I'm saying, what have we done to cease with the practice of charging students, public school students, low socioeconomic students, fees for participating in a school program?
Ms. Williams, I can just tell you right now that our CTE programs and our programs are, we're not charging for uniforms, we're not charging for materials. So if you've asked what we've done, that's what we're doing right now.
Okay, so you're saying that you're no longer doing that. When did that stop? Because I'm trying to compare when you were doing it to the data that's in front of me. Are these numbers reflective of when you stopped charging?
I can't speak to when or how or who. I can tell you that as a high school principal myself, if a student was struggling to pay a fee, I would find the money for that child. And that's what our principals do.
No, but the point is, this is what I'm trying to understand. Understand what you're saying you would do personally. We have to deal with policy. And I just want us to be transparent, and let's fix it. We have parents here. We have community leaders here. I mean, even can go back to the Kickstart program, where students are having to pay to even participate in Kickstart. So all I'm saying, guys, if we're going to ever start to do right, let's just go ahead and let's just nail it out.
Ms. Williams, can I ask, because I'm trying to figure this out, what page are you on in the TAPER report? I'm not.
We are speaking on CTE.
I know what I don't see it. I'm asking you. Are you referring to CCMR relative to CTE?
I mean, that's only one CTE, correct?
Well, I'm trying to follow along and understand.
No, what I'm saying is that when they made the analogy that students are not, African American students are not participating in the CTE program, I was bringing it up, Ms. Malone, that price is a barrier. You know my theme, removing barriers, raising the bar?
Yeah, I'm trying to connect the dots. Thank you.
Okay. Right. So that's basically what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
Pricing these kids out of programs, yet we're coming in here saying how bad they're doing. If they were given an opportunity to participate, and if that barrier of cost was removed, I think we can probably start to level that playing field. It's basically what I'm saying. So we can just get to the point that whatever we did in the past may have not been the best thing, but let's not pretend that our parents can't read a letter that says, Sally wants to participate in Kickstart, yet you don't have the $50 for her to do it. Or you have 4 kids and all 4 of them want to do it, and you just don't have the $200 for them to do it. I'm just saying, remove those prices, remove some of those barriers. I know some schools have a payment plan now where it's you can pay like $8.99 for like four installments of $8.99, and you can do Kickstart. We are a public school. We shouldn't be charging students to participate in those type of programs while using public funds. I think we spend, $1 million a year on Kickstart? All students should have access to those programs, is what I'm saying. So the same goes with CTE. We can do the spiel all day. I just want transparency, correct the problem, and let's go.
I think that you're referring to what's on slide 16, which has the college, career, and military readiness breakdown by ethnicity, the percent that have met those CCMR indicators in the class of 2021. And so I'm going to ask those that are taking notes so that we could follow up with a clear answer about the history. But to be clear, the CTE courses are not being charged for at this time. You asked for a historical information about the about charging for that. So we don't have the information tonight, but we can answer that question afterwards.
Oh, and I wasn't asking you because I'm the one that filed the complaint with Charles, when Dr. Dupree was here, when the price, so I know the historical nature of it. I know. I don't want to waste the staff's time with that.
Okay.
I know what you did. And I know it was a barrier for all kids to have access. So they don't have to waste their time. I'm here to talk about we need to cease the charging of not only CTE, but the Kickstart and any other program that's being operated on our campuses that are not allowing low socioeconomic students to have access to. Is basically what I'm getting at.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I have one more question. It relates to the it's Section 1, Special Education Results-Driven Accountability, SPED students. I'm seeing ages from 3 years old to 21. Are we suspending 3-year-old students? Is that what this is saying?
No, ma'am. That particular indicator is not about suspension or ISS. It is identification for the program. So the rate of students identified in ages 3 through 5 for that program.
So, for instance, if I'm looking at SPED separate setting rate, age 6 to 21. Is that does not mean you're doing it? This is just a column that was provided for you.
Right. These are the criteria that TEA rates us on. They look at data in each one of these 18 areas, and they tell us if we are meeting the target or not based on our data. That particular one that you were talking about, the SPED separate settings rate,
right.
That is the rate of students who could be ages 6 to 21 who are in a separate setting as opposed to inclusion.
Okay, so let's go with ISS, ages 3 to 21. Are we putting 3-year-olds in school suspension?
We are not. But there might be some people across the state that do, so the state reports on it. They look at our data to see.
Right, so what I'm hearing you state is that the indicators that I see here, Fort Bend ISD didn't meet these standards or didn't?
These are just the whole list of all of the indicators. The one that we did not meet the target on relates to the African American students who are put into ISS, OSS, and DAEP, who are special education students. That's the only one. And it's a combination of ISS, OSS, and DAEP.
And which indicator is that?
Dr. Hill.
That would be indicator 18. And so I do want to clarify, Ms. Williams, ages 3 through 21, this is a federal standard, but in Texas, we have additional rules above what the feds have. And so in Texas, we don't suspend students that are 3 years old, 4 years old, and 5-year-olds. So that, so that's a little bit different, but the standard set by the state is coming from the U.S. Department of Education. So when you look at indicator 18, and it's talking about total disciplinary removals, we're being held accountable for the number of students who are sent to ISS, OSS, and DAEP, regardless of whether it's a mandatory offense or not. And we're being accountable for those students within the special education population, and we compare, and our African American population of special education students is beyond the required level by the state, and really by the feds.
By the feds. Okay. Now, what age do we suspend students at? What ages are we suspending students?
Well, I think it's third grade.
Third grade.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good. Okay, that's good. I'm not against suspending them 3rd and up. I'm not saying let them come into school and go wild. So I'm not against discipline. I'm just trying to understand, because when I saw 3 years old, I was taking it back.
And actually it is a federal mandate, and there are states that do allow suspension and ISS for 3-year-olds, but we do not.
Wow. Okay. And then, since Dr. Hartley is here, okay, go ahead.
And let me just also interject. For out-of-school suspension, we are prohibited by the state to do out-of-school suspension for McKinney-Vento students or homeless students. That's limited to out-of-school suspension. So unless it's a gun, drugs, or assault. So there is a prohibit for McKinney-Vento students.
Okay, now that you're here, Dr. Harley, I just got a quick question for you as it relates to the DAEP placement.
Okay.
I had a situation a while back, and it was concerning a student who was placed into DAEP, an African-American student, and they were trying to see why wasn't he given or she given access to the RISE program. And I was told that you guys went back to his middle school or elementary school to speak on truancy. How do you determine if a student is allowed to go to the RISE program when they're placed in the AEP?
Oh, thank you for the opportunity to educate and inform you what we do here in Student Affairs. So the RISE program is a drug education program. So any student who is sent to DAP based on an offense involving drugs or alcohol, those students will participate in RISE. If a student is sent on an offense not related to a drug or alcohol offense, they are not eligible for RISE. We do look at discipline history. The state provides us a list of considerations. Discipline history is one of those considerations. Now, what we normally do is look for the prior couple of years to see if there's been a history of offenses at the campus. We do look at attendance and skipping as part of that in determining the number of days. It does not decide the placement or non-placement of a student. It does influence the number of days that a student is placed. We have a rubric established in Student Affairs and a committee that reviews and compares to ensure that there's equity for all students. We don't do truancy at elementary levels, so there would be no cause for us to go back.
School, I'm sorry, it was at Baines, I'm sorry. It was middle school.
And it could be. Well, for example, if I have a ninth grader and there's been patterns of truancy, it may not influence the days as much as it would tell us to refer that student to the student attendance specialist that is housed at Ferndale Henry. I'll allow that student attendance specialist to work with that student with truancy intervention plans and involve the parents in building, the capacity to attend school.
Right. So, last thing, and I'm gonna be quiet, y'all, for the rest of the night. I'm done. Last thing, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're stating that when we're placing students in DAEP, we're going back to previous grades. We're not judging the offense that they did.
So the state tells us that we look at the discipline history. We'll look at 2 years, the current year and the prior year. We'll look at 2 years to see if there's consistent behaviors that influence the number of days. We look at level 1, level 2, level 3 offenses. If I look at a student and the committee reviews that discipline history, and that student has multiple level 1 offenses, minor offenses, that's not going to impact the days. If we look at a student that has had prior DAP placements, sometimes for the same offenses, that may influence the number of days. We try to be progressive in our discipline. And we want to make sure that the student is in place, educated, and then the safety of the entire campus is maintained.
Got it. I'll speak to you off.
Sure.
But thank you for that information.
You're welcome.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you all, and thank you, Ms. Williams. And Ms. Williams, since you brought up CTE, I do want to point out something that I have heard a lot of feedback from, and since we're having the ability to talk because it's open public session, I've actually had a lot of teachers, and I want to make sure this is on the record too, that a lot of teachers have complained to me and a lot of students about the classroom fees being taken away. They have told me that never once did they have a kid, to their knowledge, who was ever on free and reduced lunch have to pay a fee. There have been teachers who've expressed that it has completely changed what they are able to deliver in the class. because what we fund versus what they were able to do with the additional funding, they've had to limit. So let's say maybe there's more worksheets and less projects, say, and that it's impacted the delivery of instruction to essentially the detriment of the kids. However, I agree with you 150% that any child in Fort Bend ISD who is economically disadvantaged should have access to a free and equitable public education, meaning that they shouldn't have to pay a doggone dime. I'm with you 100%. But if a family is able to do so, and if they do want to deliver instruction at that higher level, I support the teachers and the kids who want that.
But how can you support that when we have to have one educational standard? And what they're saying is that if you only have to provide it for the students who can't. So most of the time, there are going to be 20 students who have it. You're still going to have 3 little Bobbies and Betsies who don't have it.
No, they get it. I don't think you understand what I'm saying. I'm saying if one family is able to pay the $40 fee, they pay it. If Bobby or Betsy can't, the district pays it.
Right.
But right now, what's happening is they're no longer allowed to collect those fees in some cases. In other cases, they are, depending on whatever department. CTE specifically, they're not now. And what's happened is now they have a smaller budget.
Right.
Because now they are only being compensated and given a budget based on the district's funds. So before, you know how when we look at the budgets and we've got the classroom fees, those classroom fees were given by parents. So they still exist today. Or let's say if you're in a volleyball or a PTA or whatever it might be, there's other ways that generate revenue. Well, we have cut that arm off of them. So they now have zero.
But the thing about it is that we didn't cut that arm off of them. Our legislators cut that arm off because it's the law. We didn't make it. Fort Bend didn't do that.
So that's not the law, and we can talk about it more later. I just wanted to make sure I was on the record, and I wanted to share with you what I've heard from teachers who've come back to me to say, why did we do this, and to let me know how it's impacted their programs. And I know we've got a lot going on tonight, and we can sit down and discuss
But
this.
I just want you to tell them that they can still charge fees. All they're saying is that you have a right to charge fees.
Okay.
You can't charge someone who doesn't have it. So
we agree on that.
Right,
So what
charge-
happened is now we're not charging at all.
why not?
I think that was the message they received or thought they received, and
They
so
didn't read the law.
Well, I think, Ms. Malone, I think the problem was there was never any certainty that anyone was being denied, but there were accusations being made that people were being denied. And so to avoid that, we simply said we're not going to charge anybody and allow that. So that's the problem with
It was
statements.
not-
So, what I'm glad to hear, and Ms. Williams, what I'm glad to hear is, this is what, I'm just going to be honest, public, this is what is so doggone hard about being on the Board of Trustees, is that we're so limited in when we're able to talk to each other.
But I think this is an important conversation.
But I'm grateful, though, because right now we're having the
But let's
conversation.
not talk about it was an accusation, because I had the meeting with Mr. Scamato was present at the level 2. So this is a decision that was made by Charles Dupree. So we went all the way through. So it was not an accusation. A student had to actually pay the money on RepTurt. Now, if you're telling me, Danetta, you want to go to cosmetology, the fee is $50. The minute $385. The minute I see it in the counselor's office, I already know Big Mama don't have this money, so I'm not going to even try. So don't make like it's accusation. It's a reality for many people. All they have to do is see the flyer at the cafeteria. They already know Big Mama don't have it. So let's not make it about accusations. Let's
Ms. Williams,
do better.
just to be accurate, your grievance had nothing to do with the CTE programs. It only had to do with school uniforms on the campuses, and there was no finding
Robert,
in
stop.
favor of your grievance.
Okay, I'm done because this is going to get ugly.
All right, yeah, and we don't want that. We're here
No,
for
we don't. We don't.
constructive. We are here
And
to be
thank you, Madam
constructive.
President. I appreciate you.
All right, but I'm glad we're on the same page that we think that anyone in a hardship situation, they should have access to education as like anyone else in Fort Bend County.
Exactly.
Okay, and then it looks like Dr. Gilliam, you have additional comments.
I just forgot one question, and I'm going back to what was just talked about, the 2022 special education determination status. Okay, we're at needs assistance. I can remember this time last year, there was a percentage point or 5, it was a 5 and we were a 4, or we were a 4.5 and we had to, I can't remember the actual numbers, but where are we as far as needing assistance? Are we really, really in need of assistance, way at 80%, or are we at 20%? What is that?
So, Ms. Gilliam, the needs assistance is actually, it's right below not needing any help at all, so it's pretty good. Below that is needs intervention. We've been needs assistance for the last couple of years. I think that what you're, and the reason that we're needs assistant is the disproportionality, and I believe what you're referring to was that discussion about the 2.5. That's the standard for the RDA, and we did get better in the sense that we went below for OSS. We went to a 2.3, which dropped us out of significant disproportionality status for OSS. However, I will say that was COVID year, so the next year, instead of being deemed for OSS, we got deemed for total discipline, which includes all three, ISS, OSS, and DAEP. So even though we're not where we should be, right, we're about 2.7 when we looked at the 21-22 determination, so we're just above the 2.5. And actually, you know, Dr. Whitback mentioned TEA coming out this week. They gave us we're very impressed with the work that we're doing in Fort Bend. Many districts are struggling with this disproportionality, and I think a lot of it, you know, DAEP, vaping, those numbers are included. And so they were very impressed with the work we're doing and believe that we are on the right track. I think that, again, being right above that 2.5, 2.7, 2.8, surrounding it, we're just not under the 2.5. And until we get under the 2.5 for total discipline now, we won't be off of this kind of list of disproportionality. Does that help clarify?
It does. And my question is, because we've had this for at least 10 years, back and forth. If not more.
The standard has changed, but we've had these challenges for over 10 years.
Okay.
In special ed.
And so, again, going back to improvement plans possibly for the district, I don't know if I could touch that to find out what we should be doing or what we are doing. So if we could just be, I guess, more transparent on that. This is where the number is, and here's what we're doing to reduce 0.2% or 0.2 or what have you. At least we can track it again.
Yeah, and I think if you remember the district improvement plan updates that you guys get, that is in there. It's actually an objective that we monitor, and it's reported out. It's it's part of our. I think that's part of your Dr. Whitback holding you accountable, correct? So that is on there, and the progress is in there. And so, we can certainly go back and review that district improvement plan and give you that information if you have any questions. Later, not tonight.
Okay, and I do understand that. So I would like to have seen that here with the taper, from one taper to the next taper. If we're looking at this data, are we comparing apples to apples? So I would like to see from last year where we are now when we're looking at the taper data, if that's possible.
Yeah, we can provide that. It becomes confusing since the discipline data is 2 years old. So, but I think what you're saying is instead of wanting to see the dip data, you want to see the taper, so it's apples to apples.
Right, and sometimes I think that even in the DIP data, and that's the district improvement plan data, compared to the TAPR data, it should be right at the same, or no?
Well, it's different because the district improvement plan is current data.
Okay.
And what we're doing, we provide you, hey, here's where we are today, here's where you are this 9 weeks, this quarter, but the taper is talking about information that happened 2 years ago.
Okay.
It becomes confusing.
Is it 2 years ago because of the pandemic?
No, it's 2 years ago because whenever the taper date comes out every year, it's reporting on discipline data, and it's always 2 years behind, similar to the graduation data.
Okay. So, yes, I think that we need an update on it so that we can see exactly where we are on this particular issue with special education determination.
Okay, well, yeah, and we can follow up with some of that current information.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gilliam. Mr. Garcia?
Just one question. If you take out the vaping, do we fall below the 2.5?
You know, I haven't run those numbers, Mr. Garcia, to see, so I'd have to look at that. I mean, it feels like we are approving, you know, we have a lot of that, but we haven't pulled it out to see what would it look like if, and that could be something that we do just to kind of have a better understanding.
And I was just curious. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Garcia. Yeah, that vaping is crazy how many kids do that. It's so bad for you. I have one thing that just really sticks out to me, and I understand that we had the pandemic, and that is on the attendance and dropout rates. And by the way, all of you have asked really excellent questions, and this is the last thing that it just leaves me to, of concern, mainly for our community, and that is the dropout rate increasing, because we know that a kid who drops out of high school is more likely to be incarcerated, to be addicted to substances, homeless, etc. And one thing I want to acknowledge is that I appreciate the RISE program and the mention of that and discussion and sharing that information for the public about how we are not just punishing a kid, but trying to educate them on what these substances do to your body and the effects they have on your life and how they can change the trajectory in a really unfortunate way. But I guess I would like to know if golly, here's the deal. The VATRE failed. I know we're sitting here in this budget situation where we're sitting here making cuts left and right. And I'm wondering, when I see this increase, what are we doing differently to help these kids? Because when I see this right here, this breaks my heart. Seeing an additional 1 to 10, the number increasing, because 68% of those kids are likely to be incarcerated, and that's too much.
Dr. Hostin, would it be a correct statement, though, in thinking through the 2021 school year? So let's go back to where we were. In the spring of 2020, we had the pandemic, and everyone stayed home. And then we began the next school year, which is this school year. And in Fort Bend ISD, we did not come to school for 9 weeks. And I stress that because that is of concern to me. I was not here at the time. That is of concern to me. That's one of the longer range amounts of time of any district. I'm often reminded of that by when I speak with elected officials of anywhere in the state. But that decision was made. So what I predict in this, if we were to dig deep, is that we have kids that are lost. Kids because we saw this across the state, they went off to grandma in Arkansas, or they went to another country. We can see that when we track our laptops, even across the state. There's story after story. And so this may be a very big reflection of simply just disappearing, and we are tracked, and Dr. Guillory is the queen of knowing this, but of the codes. Like, for example, if a student is with us and they move to Dallas, they enroll in the school in Dallas, its records are moved and the code is entered into the system, and then they're not a dropout. But if they just disappear off the radar, they're a dropout.
Right.
And so they may not really have dropped out, but we can't find them. And so that happened in droves between the spring of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, if that makes sense. So that's a point of information, because I think it is very relative to the time and what happened. And so I think it'll be important to see what are we doing now in comparison as we look, if that helps.
And I can tell you, I've been involved in research specifically about the McKinney-Vento students who were labeled as dropouts, and our foster care students for that particular school year. And what we found is that it was exactly what Dr. Whitbeck is talking about. They they were not findable. All of the things, we actually had more luck with the foster care students because they're in the state system, but the homeless students, we had several that we were not able to find at the district level. So some of the things that we are doing are related to looking at the procedures that we've had in place for tracking down students, using our homeless liaison specifically for that subset of students, and looking at training for the staff who do the looking for those students and the coding of them to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to try to find them and recapture them and see. Some of them may be in school somewhere, but if it's not here in the state of Texas, and we don't have a way to find them, then they are reported as dropouts.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Whitbeck and Dr. Costin, for the extensive explanation on that. That gives me relief, truly a little bit of relief, because and y'all know that, but every kid counts, and I want to see them all graduate and have a beautiful path in life. So thank you all, and thank you, board. And now we're going to open it up to public comments on the district's 2020-2021 Texas Academic Performance Report. Do you have any folks in the public who'd like to make some comments? Okay, seeing none, may I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I move to adjourn.
The time is 7 p.m. and we are now adjourned. And just as a heads up, we'll take a 5-minute restroom break, or break, whatever. This is just what I need.